life in 3 dimensions got me bent and got me twisted. I know I done said a lot, but I should probably stop pretending. I don't really hold the key and I can't really push a button. I just step up to the mic and try my very best to bust it, but I ran out of breath. It's tight in my chest, my feet just might fail. I can't stand the pressure.
Welcome back, Racially Speaking family, to where we have real and honest conversations about race as it's viewed through the lenses of faith, family, and vocation. As always, I'm David Phipps, of course, joined by my guy, John Mark Walker. John Mark, how you doing,
man?
What's
up, everybody? I'm doing well. It's been a good day. A little rainy in the morning, but sunny in the afternoon. Got to play outside with my kids a little bit, so it's always a good time.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm good. I looked at the forecast, so we've gone from this is Virginia. If you're not living in Virginia, but we go from 75 beautiful, 2 days later. I think it's supposed to snow in 2 days.
Is it really?
It's Thursday night right now. I think Saturday's supposed to snow.
Yeah, that's kind of sad.
Yeah, that's crazy.
We're supposed to be headed into spring. Spring is starting next week.
So I like the cold actually, but I don't know if I can handle snow right now, man.
I know.
Right. Well.
Yeah, but how are you doing? How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I mean, it's been great to get out more. I live on a great street with a lot of kids to run around with my kids, and it's been fun getting out and running around, shooting hoops, and just enjoying the weather. Except today it was rather rainy and cloudy. But I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Good. I was thinking. This morning, I was listening to this album I listen to all the time, and I can't remember if we talked about this. Have we talked about Encanto on here yet?
Oh my gosh, no.
But have you watched it with your kids?
Oh my gosh, do you mean have I watched it upwards of 20 times? Did my kids go to bed singing "We Don't Talk About Bruno"?
Oh my gosh, I love that song. That song is amazing. So I feel like we should do. I feel like we need to talk about Encanto. Mm-hmm. I feel like we should do a Lin-Manuel Miranda episode where we just talk about his greatest hits, because he did Moana, Encanto, In the Heights, Hamilton.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So
we could do about 30 episodes. More.
Yeah. So I just want him to write the soundtrack to my life. Mm-hmm. I just want to walk through life with a Lin-Manuel Miranda beats behind me, going everywhere I go. Oh yeah,
absolutely. He's doing, or he did. I wanted to actually get put out. Little Mermaid, live action.
Wait, for real?
Yeah, he wrote.
That's awesome.
He did the music for that.
It's gonna be great.
And David Diggs, Marquis de Lafayette from Hamilton is Sebastian. Yeah. That's gonna be incredible. That's gonna be awesome. I don't know what's going on with production. Obviously, COVID happened, but I want to see a trailer so bad.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited about that too. Yeah. So we got to do Encanto. We got to talk about Encanto, but
we'll make that happen. I have a slew of people that I feel like I'd be obligated to consider bringing on if we talked about Hamilton. One of which would be my wife again.
Hamilton. Yeah, your wife for sure. Hamilton should be its own episode, because there's enough for multiple episodes in that. But,
yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I'm going to keep talking about it until it happens. So
we'll do it.
Get it on the books.
I see. So you're giving me subtle jabs. Is that what's happening here?
Yeah. I mean, every time we're on the mic, I look behind you and I see the Hamilton.
Oh, that's true. I'm just.
So every time.
Yeah, I forget that's there.
It's just always there in my face. So it's got to happen, and then I'll stop talking about it.
No, it will happen. It'll happen. We can't. We got to do it right. It can't just clumsily go into it. But not that I'm not always ready to talk about Lin.
Yeah. But all that to say, I, on my own, listened to Encanto soundtrack just because it's so good. It's like my get me through the day music right now.
Hey, that's tough, man. I don't know if I've done it by myself. That's awesome. Definitely with my kids all day when I'm with them. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Enough from us. We have some not Hamilton. This is not the Hamilton episode, so I'm sorry if we dangled a carrot in front of you, Hamilton people,
hate to disappoint.
or Encanto people. But we are gonna have a really important conversation that I am extremely excited about. I'm always excited about what we're going to talk about on here, but this is just going to be a really cool conversation. I already know. We are joined by an old friend, a new friend for John Mark, fellow Radford alumni, Allana Dye. Allana is, went to Radford, We crossed paths when she was here as undergrad, and now she's currently doing her master's degree. Correct me if I'm wrong, Allana. Master's degree at Howard University, and she's currently. I'm lucky we caught her on her spring break, and so she was readily available. So thankful to jump on here tonight with us, and man, we're gonna pick her brain about so many cool things. So Allana, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, no problem. By the way, I'm a big Encanto fan too. I don't have kids, and I still listen to the album on my own all the time.
Yes, nice. I'm right there with you.
Like where TikTok was like knowing, and I used to get the like Easter egg TikToks where people would like share all the things from the movies. So,
yes, yeah. So I'm not on TikTok, but my wife Caitlin, who you guys both know, she was showed me all of those when it was, not that it's not big still, but there's some good TikToks out there, Encanto themed. Yeah, man, so good. Yeah. So Allana, thank you so much for coming on here. Again, this is gonna be really cool. So tell us, I gave you a little introduction, but tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're up to. I know that's really broad. I don't hope that's not overwhelming, but you're at Howard right now. Start there.
So I'm currently getting my master's in secondary education at Howard. I want to basically be a high school history teacher. Awesome. It took me a while to figure that out, to be honest, because I got my bachelor's in psychology. Okay. So I thought I was going to go along that line. And then I realized that going to grad school for psychology was really hard. And I was like, that's a lot of energy to expel. And I don't know if that's where I want to go with it. But also, once I finished at Radford, I moved home, and I actually worked at Barnes & Noble for 2 years. And so just...
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah, so just working in customer service was very draining. And so I was I wanted to go the counseling route, but I was like, just working in customer service, I feel like I'm doing that already. And I don't know if this is for me for right now.
Gotcha.
So it actually was the like George Floyd murder that happened. That's actually what led me to realize that I wanted to get into education, because I actually had decided that I wanted to go to school, or I wanted to go into high school and start teaching all students, but also focusing on like Black and brown students to help them move forward in life and I don't know, be successful, because they have that stigma sometimes of just people underestimating them and not thinking that they can do more than they can. Especially young Black girls. Like that's kind of where I want my focus to go. Obviously, again, I want to teach all students, but that's kind of where I want to like pour my energy into, because I feel like that's such an area where it leaves a lot of work, especially in the education system. So that's kind of what like sparked my like, I guess, passion, because I was like, you know what? Like, I remember being like a young Black girl in school, and there were times where I wish I had someone to like pour into me, whether it be like faith wise or just life wise, or like advocate for me too. And luckily I had my mom, but like in school wise, it didn't really feel like I had a lot of people on my side a lot of the time. So I don't know. It just kind of spurred me. I was like, I want to do that for other girls who really need it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So that's kind of how I guess I got to this point. How I got to Howard. I don't know. It was kind of a spur of the moment of I was applying to other schools for education, and then my mom was like, "Why don't you apply to Howard?" And I was like, I don't know if they're gonna like accept me, because I'm an average student. So I was like, I don't know if it's gonna work. And she was like, just do it. You don't know. And then I applied and I got in, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, wow, okay. Yeah. Like, I guess this is where I'm gonna be for a bit. But yeah, so cool. It was a really big like blessing, and just kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's incredible.
Do you think that your vision for caring for Black girls kind of led to your mom and your desire to go to Howard? Like, did that at all influence your decision in grad school?
Yes, I think so. To be honest, I developed that vision as I started taking classes at Howard, because I was starting to, because I took a diversity in education class, and I was starting to see all the statistics, and it was really disheartening. And that's when I kind of just it started like kind of sharpening like what path I really wanted to go down with it.
Are you TAing there right now?
Yeah, so I'm not a TA, but I'm a student. I'm student teaching at one of the local high schools in DC as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
With my program, I have to have a certain amount of student teaching hours.
Yes.
So, which it's been fun so far. It was very nerve-wracking because I was like, I've never been in a public school, so I don't know what this is gonna be like for me, let alone a public school in DC. It was very.
So I can't remember if you said this before we even started recording. So you grew up not in public school. You went to private school, right?
Yeah. So I went to private Catholic schools all my life. Okay. So in a sense, I could say that I did have that like privilege of having that. I don't want to say better education, but I would say maybe a higher degree. I don't want to. It's a weird wording. I hate that wording, but I'm trying to think of.
It's messy. I grew up going to private school as well. Yeah.
So it's like, it's not better, but I guess the standards in those schools are a lot higher is what I mean. So you really were pushed more academically to like get to basically to finish. For better, for worse. Yes. Yes. Yeah. They were like dragging you. You're like, you're going to get out. So, in that sense, I never really had to struggle with like going to a public school, and especially in an inner city school where they do lack funding, or maybe the students aren't in a good place, like home wise or just city wise. Like where I'm student teaching, a lot of the students, like it's not the best area at all. Like. I have to like my family checks in on me and they're like, "Are you good?" And I'm like, "I'm fine. Like I have a car. I don't have to go anywhere. Like I'm just going to the school." Yeah. But so it was kind of like a culture shock going there, because I realized I was like, wow, like not that I didn't know about like the privilege that I do carry in that sense, because again, also my family's pretty middle class, so like I never had to worry about that kind of stuff like money. But it was. Like, and still every day, like just hearing the students talk sometimes, I'm just like, wow, like I was lucky not to have these things to worry about in school half the time.
Wow. So, thanks for jumping in. You lobbed up a bunch of questions over the plate that I now know that we can easily get into. That was fantastic. Introduction. I mean, we're 15 minutes in. That was awesome. So like, no, seriously, this makes it easier to ask a question. So like, I will take us back. So I know you from Radford, and which is, where I currently still live and teach there myself. I'd love to ask you about your experience, if you're willing to like talk about that. So you went to undergrad in rural Southwest Virginia at a predominantly white institution, PWI. So like you explained what led you to Howard. So I don't know, looking back, I don't know how consciously aware you were of your experience while you were in Radford. I mean, both the university and the surrounding area, because I know they can be, there's overlap, but they're also drastically different. Yeah. How would you compare like your experience with your racial and ethnic identity between Howard and Radford, like the settings? And I don't know, John Mark kind of asked this, but did having come from a place like Radford, or even maybe where you grew up, influence you or motivate you to go to Howard, which, I think at least on the East Coast is probably the most well-known HBCU. Correct me if I'm wrong. But one of the more well-known ones. So I don't know, was there like, can you talk about some of the elements that went into you deciding to do that, and maybe also your experience so far?
Yeah. So I think looking back, like while I was at Radford, I don't think I was consciously aware of a lot of those thoughts, mostly because I did go to a private schools all my life. So I feel like I learned how to grow up and navigate predominantly white spaces. So it wasn't, I won't say I was comfortable, but I knew how to exist, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So going to Radford, that stuff never really was like evident. But looking back now, like I can clearly say I was like, wow, that was it wasn't a bad experience. It was definitely just different. But I think like maybe the time frame of when I would maybe have started to become aware of that was when Trump was doing his campaigning and he came to Radford. And that was like kind of like a wake up moment, because I was like, okay, it wasn't, and not that it wasn't that he was there. It was all the people showing up on campus, going to the rally. Like, I was like, wow, not that I didn't know a lot of people liked him, but I was like, wow, a lot of people in this area really liked him. And it wasn't surprising, but it was more just,
it was jarring.
It was jarring. It just kind of made me wake up, and I was like, wow. It made me look around and realize where I was. I was like, oh, I'm in Southwest Virginia. This is where I'm located currently. Okay. And not that I never ever want to assume like someone who like voted for him or supported him is like racist or anything like that. But it made me kind of be more cautious, I guess, in a sense. Just I don't know where like who these people are. I don't know where they come from. Fair. Like, I don't want to assume anything bad, but I also don't want to put myself in a situation where something bad could happen or like negative could happen, I guess. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah.
So that was kind of like my moment of like, okay, you are in a very predominantly white area and school. And so I don't think I ever came up with a solution of what to do, but it was just kind of like, okay, you're here. Well,
so I gotta ask you this question. You talked about at the high school that you're at, that your family checks up on you and make sure you're doing all right. And you say you have a car. Did you have that car at Radford, and did your family check up on you in a similar way while you were living in Radford?
Yes. So I did actually have the exact same car. So yes, I did have my car at Radford. The only thing is my mom had just gotten stationed in California. And so I had no family around me except for an aunt who still lived up here in Northern Virginia. Okay. And I don't think they were too like super worried, but obviously like I was a young female in college, so obviously they checked up on me. But I remember specifically the day that Trump came, like my dad was even texting me, like he was like, hey, like just be careful, like just be aware of your surroundings. He was like, are you going? And I was like, I mean, no, but also I had a class, so I was like, I have a class, so I can't. Even if I wanted to go, I couldn't. But I was like, no, and I was like, I'm honestly just kind of keeping my head down, minding my business, and like. Luckily, I lived off campus at that time, so I didn't even have to really stay on super long. I just needed to stay until my class was over, and then I got on the bus and went back to wherever I was going. Yeah. So
I
appreciate you sharing that, Allana. And for our listeners, to be clear, like I had no intention of even going there, but I think that this is like an important thing to maybe unpack even a little bit. And yeah, Allana, thank you for sharing that. I feel like you described like what many people of color were experiencing and were feeling during 2016, 2020, like through that time period of maybe a level of not paranoia or fear, some fear, but like it
just like caution.
Yeah, I feel like you were talking about like an insecurity, because I remember that, that day I was in Radford then as well. And the way I would describe it is it wasn't like a political, it wasn't strictly just like, oh, a politician that some of us agree with, some of us don't, is like swinging through here. It felt different. And as you mentioned, it's not a individual, like, oh, if you were there supporting him, or if you do support him, like, you're a terrible person. But I feel like you did a very vulnerable job of describing the insecure feeling of not knowing what to think, like jarring or disorientation maybe of like, I remember the things he said at the rally and just the type of rhetoric that really everyone has seen it, but we experienced like in Radford, like the way he emboldened his supporters, many of which are racist, not all, but many of which were, with literal racist rhetoric, and then putting two and two together, seeing the droves of people that, are my neighbors driving down to support him is jarring and does have the effects of wanting to make sure you're safe, and looking over your shoulder and be like, okay, whoa, what's happening? Where am I? It was more than a political figure that was just, 50-50 split and, who cares type thing. It was like, you cared one way or the other that he was there.
And it was like, it wasn't even like, obviously, whether you agreed or disagreed. It was more just whatever, I feel like whatever president rally, whatever you're looking at, there's always a fanatic. There's always fanatics. And so I think that's where the caution was of like, okay, I don't care if you're going to see whoever you want to see. But at what level of energy are you exuding at this event? Like, where are you at in your like excitement? Are you taking it too far? Are you like, so it was more just like making sure I wasn't going to run into a fanatic at any point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm here for my education. Like I just want to go to class and go home. So it's just like in that sense where like some people can take their excitement a little too far. And so I wanted to make sure I wasn't encountering those people on any certain day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so that was a unique experience. So like Radford, and you did 4 years here, and we're in the area for a long time. What would you say like is the cultural? Some of it's probably obvious, but like just taking that feeling, not just from that day, but like of like you worded navigating. I actually wrote it down because I thought it was really good. That you weren't necessarily comfortable, but you knew how to exist. So taking that feeling from navigating a predominantly white institution to now being at a HBCU, like the HBCU. So like, can you describe the difference? Like, I don't know, internally?
I will say, this may come out weird, but I will say when I got to Howard for like orientation, I was like, wow, this is a lot of Black people, because I had never been in a space with so many before. And it wasn't like a bad thing, but that's like your first thought is like, there's a lot of Black people in one area. Like, this is pretty cool. But at the same time, I was like, it's new. So it's been cool. Like compared to the experience with Radford, I will say, so like one experience I can clearly use is, so I have an advisor at HBCU now, obviously in my program. And then I had advisors at Radford. I can tell you now, like my advisors at Radford, I don't think they would remember me. And granted, they had a lot of students. I give them leeway. I didn't really go to them often, most of the time because I didn't feel like I could, or I didn't feel comfortable, or feel like they would necessarily want to help me. But I'm pretty sure they don't remember me. I originally was a history major when I went into Radford, and then I changed my
you came full circle.
Yeah. I wanted to double major actually in history and psychology, but the advisor I had wouldn't let me. And it was really weird because it was my freshman year, and I had asked him, I was like, hey, I just would like you to sign this paper. You don't have to do anything else. I just want to double major. And he just refused. He was like, that's too many hours. And I was like, well, it's my freshman year. I don't understand why it's too many hours if I'm willing to put in work, but okay. So he just refused. So I had to choose psychology. Like I had to just choose to change my major. And then even the psychology advisor I had, she was like helpful sometimes, but I remember her like saying she was just not very helpful in a sense of I graduated late. So she wasn't helpful in that sense, like helping me make sure I get the classes I need to be taking. Also, she like told me she didn't understand the path I was taking because she was clearly on the research track with psychology, and I didn't want to do that. And she was baffled that I didn't want to go into research. And it was just a weird vibes all around. Yeah. Whereas like my advisor at Howard, like, and again, I take into account that there's only 5 of us in my cohort, so that maybe could play a role. But I know he teaches a lot of classes too, so he deals with students every day. But he checks in with us like at least monthly, if not like weekly. Wow. He is he makes sure like he for sure knows all of us by name. He makes it a point to, when he does check in, he always asks like, do you need anything? Are you guys good? Do you need me to talk to any of your professors about assignments, or are you comfortable? Are you good mentally? Like he makes it a point. Like at one point he was like, wow, do you need money for food? Like, no, I don't want you starving.
Wow, what a community. That's amazing.
Yeah, would you say, so that's like, I feel like a micro example, would you say on the like macro level, like do your classmates or other students have similar experiences? Because that would be such a interesting cultural element to know.
I feel like yes, but I also know at least 2. I don't know. I haven't talked to them a lot about their experiences. I know 2 of the girls that are in my cohort went to Howard before, and they came back for grad school. And then 2 other students, one is from the Bahamas, so I don't know. And then the other one I think he came from Kentucky. So he might have a similar mindset.
Yeah.
But it was, I had never, I was not used to an advisor being that invested, like even offering me like food money just to make sure I was good. So it was, that was like I guess that's the best way I could describe the difference of just like Radford and Howard. Not that Radford was bad, it's just different.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've experienced more professors who are really willing to like go to bat for you if you need it, or willing just to take into account that you have a lot going on mentally. And maybe again, I could apply that to like, it is after COVID. We've all been through the ringer, I'm sure. So then maybe they're taking that into extra account. But yeah, it's definitely been like very different experiences, which isn't necessarily bad. But yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that was awesome. Go ahead, John Mark.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm so happy that you found an experience in grad school with a community that's so focused on your success and helping you succeed and excel in life. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because I feel like at Radford, that's the other thing. I don't think I ever saw, well, at least in my department, I didn't really see any Black professors. So coming to Howard, and I won't, not the entire faculty is Black. Obviously, they have like a diverse faculty, but the classes I'm taking now, most of my professors are Black. So it's very interesting perspectives to get, because they're very different experiences too.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
I wasn't expecting much, but it's cool.
Oh man, I love. Awesome. Yeah, that was a great setup. Something I want to ask about. Let's take a quick break, and I want to pick up right there. That was great. This podcast was created to elevate BIPOC voices and our allies, and to invite everyone else to listen in, learn, and grow with us. If you have benefited from listening to any of our conversations and haven't already, please make sure to hit subscribe in whatever app you're listening on right now. Now, back to the conversation. All right, like I said, Allana, I wanted to ask you about something you just brought up. So you talked about how it's been impactful to have more professors, more Black professors specifically, teaching you and pouring into you. Can you talk a little bit about like why that has been important for you personally and like your development as a student and just as a human being, a Black woman? Not because you have like a Black professor brought in to teach like an African American studies course, but like you just have Black professors teaching you college courses.
Yeah, so it's been very like cool in a sense, because I feel like, and I don't want to say this, that like other professors or like other professors of color or white professors don't do this, but I feel like so far with the professors I've had, they do a really good job of I feel like they take on like a mentorship almost. They like do a good job of kind of like taking you under their wing and really like sharing their knowledge. Like for my student teaching, I have to take a seminar class along with that. And so my professor, she makes a point. She makes a point to say that this class is an open space. So this is the class that we can all come in and kind of share our experiences of our student teaching and like bounce ideas off each other, and really work with each other if we're having like struggles with a student or a teacher or whatever. And I feel like she's really good at sharing her experiences. Like no experience, she won't hold back, I guess, on it, telling us any stories or breaking down her experiences with us and giving us her knowledge. Like, she's very good at really just sharing her wealth, I guess. She doesn't, like, she's not afraid to just be like, when I was in school, like, this is what happened to me. And I had this whole, like, she'll really tell you a story about her experience, but it's helpful because like, you never know if you're going to have the same experience or something similar along the lines. And she's really big on pulling in any resource she can grab. So like, if she she needs a speaker, she'll grab like someone who works in Maryland in the public school system, and she'll grab them and have them tell their stories. Okay. Yeah. And she'll grab some, like, I think we had a school from Chicago come in and talk to us because partly they were recruiting, but then also just sharing their experience of just what it was like being in the school system in Chicago. So I feel like also another thing is they're very good at giving you on various points of views, I guess, if I could say that. So my diversity and education class I actually really loved that class because it was really interesting because she built that class to incorporate all perspectives. So the book we were reading was Why Do All the Black Kids
Sit Together in the Cafeteria?
Yeah, Sit Together in the Cafeteria.
Yeah, John Mark loves that book.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too, especially because it wasn't just like a lot of it was from the Black perspective because the author was Black. So obviously that's going to be the majority. But I think I loved that she took the time to incorporate other perspectives too in the story. I think I saw like there was a chapter on white students, a chapter on Latinx or Latin American students, but that's how my class was built. That's how she built it for us. So we had a section on white students, Black students, Asian Americans, students with disabilities, mental health, students with different sexualities. So it really incorporated not just one viewpoint. It incorporated, because they could have easily just been like, oh, we're just going to learn about the Black narrative and that's it.
Right.
And instead, she was like, no, you're going to learn about all types of students because you have all types of students. Yeah. So I feel like they've been really good at really making you see broader than they could make it. So even right now, I'm in a methods of teaching class, and she specializes in English language learners. So she's having us read articles about all different types of English language learners and how They actually really need teachers, but they how they benefit from certain things and like the statistics behind them and everything like that. So
it's a tough word.
Yeah. So I just feel like that's like the biggest thing. Hopefully that answered your question. I was trying to figure out how to word it.
Yeah. I was trying to, as I was listening, trying to pick out similar themes. So I would even go back to your experience so far with like maybe advising. It seems like, at least the picture you were painting of the cultural difference is like, it feels homier and more like family oriented, I guess. Like, it's like, I don't know. It feels like you're being invited into their home, even though it's like maybe a classroom, but it feels like it's even outside the teaching setting. And even when you're talking about how she delegates or like brings people in to speak, it seems like it's very not centered around them, even as they're focusing on multiple perspectives. Like you said, it's not just like we swing to one side and it's like, okay, this is an HBCU, we're only going to care about the Black experience. But it's almost like at an HBCU, they're doing a much, 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 much better job of actually being diverse or inclusive.
I think the best way I would describe it is they make it very personal. So like, a lot of my professors have given me like their cell phone numbers and they're like, call me at any time, any day or night. And I'm like, not used to that. Like at Radford, I would never have thought I don't think I ever was offered anybody's, like, I think they gave you a phone number on the syllabus, but that's about it. Like, they're like, oh, email us if you need like an assignment or whatever. But like at Howard, like especially my one professor, she was like, text me. She was like, just text me if you need anything, let us know. I was like, okay, thanks. So
this is sounding like a Howard commercial. Like, like you're painting a beautiful picture.
You're doing a great job recruiting me and John Mark.
I know they should pay me.
I mean, I see I see like the connection. Like your advisor said, if you need grocery money, like he's invested in your well-being as well as your education. And then your professor, you said she's sharing herself, her experience, the life she lived. It was very personal. So she's like, they're personally invested in the community that they have at your school and the future of where you'll be going and teaching and want to see you succeed. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
It's beautiful.
All right. So you've given us what I think is a great picture of what you're experiencing in the classroom at Howard University right now as a grad student. Let's move a little bit into what the type of classroom you want to eventually be in vocationally, right? And I know you're student teaching some right now. I have a lot of questions that I want to ask you, which I'm sure you're going to answer a bunch of them all in one foul swoop like you've been doing, which has been fantastic. But so education is like one of the most, I feel like, politicized and divisive things happening right now in America, at least. You have willingly chose to enter into this, Allana. So what are you thinking? No, maybe a little bit, but no, we need you in there. So what are your views on what's going on? We did an episode on this, on the debates around critical race theory, talked a little bit about, book banning, and then there's more and more laws and bills being debated and passed and debated again about what I would consider, censorship, to the detriment of BIPOC voices and narratives and teaching hard history, frankly. But I'm not I teach, I'm an adjunct at a university. I'm not in the trenches like I think secondary education teachers are doing. So what are some of your thoughts on what is going on with all these debates? And I know that's a huge question, but just your perspective. So you're willingly going into this. So you obviously care for a lot of reasons. And do you think that it is, I don't know, as big a deal as it seems like it is with the polarization? Does that make sense?
Yeah. it's definitely very frustrating because I think a lot of people are coming at this, like a lot of these big like book banning and all of these like law legislations coming out about what you can and cannot do in the classroom, what you can and cannot say. I think it stems from fear, and it stems from not really knowing I don't want to say not knowing what's going on, but the ignorance of just not knowing. And I think that's just really where it stems from. And it's very frustrating because I'm like, if you were to just have a conversation, I feel like we could really not be fearful anymore. Like, so CRT was the thing that stemmed it all. Like, I feel like as soon as that really started getting.
Yeah, explain what it happened from this. Because I think me and John Mark talked about it, and we had our friend Alethea on here, and we hashed that out a little bit, but none of us are privy to a lot of the conversations of what is actually happening. We're just more privy to what it appears. Not complete. I think we do know some stuff, but we're not CRT experts. We don't know the history of book banning. We don't know all this. Like, I do know that book banning isn't new. Yeah. I know that censorship isn't like a new thing. But why is it so heightened right now? I think you're for sure right on the money with the fear thing.
I think so starting with CRT. So CRT is not even, I think the thing is people heard this and they thought it was like a big lesson plan. We were going to start, like teachers were going to start teaching about slavery and start really blaming all the white people for all the things that happened in the past. And that's not it. CRT is a framework. It's not even like a curriculum. It's just a thought process. It's a theory. So basically, you're just going into the classroom and you're teaching from a viewpoint that's not just the white narrative we've been taught for so long. If you look at our textbooks, if you look at a lot of the history books that have come out, a lot of them are from the viewpoint of white Americans because they're the ones that could write these narratives for the longest time. And so when you think about critical race theory, it's really just going back and teaching other viewpoints from those time frames. So people are scared that you'll teach slavery and you'll make the young like white kids feel bad. No, it's actually going back and just talking about other perspectives. It's going back and teaching if you were to teach the origins of slavery, you would find out that yes, white people, especially white Europeans, started this and they really profited off this, but Black people did too. Africans profited off this. They had a whole, if you look back in the history of like Africa, like they had sorry, I'm trying to think.
Slave trade
yeah, they had slave trade way before the African slave trade even like came to America. And them, it was more tribal because it was just like tribal wars and that's who they were. It was like, you're prisoner of war now, so that's what you get. But it's teaching them like it's not even just like being like, oh, white people are bad, this is why, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, you're looking back at all the causes, all the things that took place within slavery, because Black people owned slaves too. You're maybe teaching that narrative. Obviously, you're also aware of age ranges, so you know what's appropriate and what's not appropriate to teach in classrooms as well. So it's not like you're gonna come in and show a whole movie of Brutes in a 4th grade classroom. No, you're not doing that. Yes. But you're maybe not, when you teach about like the Pilgrims, maybe you're not just teaching the viewpoint of the Pilgrims. You're teaching the point of
that's a great example.
Americans who also were experiencing something for the first time, people who didn't look like them too. Yes. And so I think, unfortunately, sometimes, and this goes for like all politicians, I think politicians, when they're trying to get their votes, they take certain issues and they make it seem scary. And so I've noticed a lot of them are like, well, you don't want them teaching in your schools, this, and this. And it's like, well, that you guys you're not selling it well. You're not selling it right, because again, it's not a curriculum. Basically, you're not like, we're not coming in trying to sell and manipulate the minds of children. We're just trying to make sure they have the accurate accounts of history, you know? And I feel like it's a slippery slope when you try, like with book banning, it's a slippery slope when you try and change history too, because that's all it's like genetic mutation. That's a slippery slope too. Should you be doing it? I don't know. Like, we definitely don't want the dinosaurs to come back. So, but
I want to back up something you said, just so people know who are listening that they can look into this too. Look up Daughters of the Confederacy and history books. And then they'll really get a picture of what you're talking about, of how history has been influenced by one viewpoint on history, and now we're looking at multiple viewpoints. So looking up Daughters of the Confederacy and what they've done to history books will help back up what you said and support what you just said. And what you just said is excellent. I think you stated very clearly and very well the situation that's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks.
Another example is like for one of my classes, I had to read a textbook, and it had like a bunch of different stories from teachers on like lessons they did for their classes. So one teacher did a lesson on the presidents. And so I think this question came up in class where students were like, well, did the presidents own slaves? And so it was maybe like ninth grade. So it wasn't, they weren't like young or anything. They were like high school age. But she was like, well, I don't know. Because she was honest. She was like, I don't know. The textbook doesn't really say this. And they were like, well, why doesn't the textbook talk about this? And so she was like, I don't know, but we can make it a project and we can look this up and see. And it wasn't a narrative of like, these presidents are bad, but it was just a narrative of honest, I don't know. We can look this up. This is a way of you learning how to, one, research a topic, two, look up history, three, accurately know your history, and also question the fact that your textbooks don't have everything in it. Obviously, granted, textbooks can't have every single thing that happened in history in it, but there are some things maybe they could include, or
which makes it more important to put the right things in a lot of times. Because I've heard that defense too of like, well, we don't tell anyone's complete story. And I get that. Like, time is limited. Books are limited, literally, like paid, like you can't. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't, if anything, to me, there's more accountability in those situations too. Okay, well, then it's even more egregious that A, B, and C, these facts are left out and these are included. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, and I think it's even important to like change some of the narratives that we're telling, like not change them, but look at other times. So like we always teach about slavery, and I feel like we always teach about the painfulness of slavery. And I'm like, but I'm positive there were other accounts of Black people being successful in that time frame. Were there limited accounts? Yes, but I'm sure there were. So maybe looking and seeing in other areas where they were successful. So it's not just always this narrative of, well, Black people were owned, blah, 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 like all this kind of stuff. But in even sense, even looking at, yes, white people owned slavery, but there were white abolitionists as well who were fighting against slavery. There were even some presidents who, granted, they didn't like do anything to really change it because they probably didn't want to go against the status quo, but they wrote letters saying how they condemned slavery, and it was against the Bible and God and stuff like that too. But just looking at like the entire like obviously not enough time, but more than one narrative of those time periods.
To me, is it fair to say, like, based on what you're saying and what I think we'd already kind of arrived at, John Mark and I on some of our conversations, but like with the CRT stuff or like the increased book banning and censorship, I think the fear thing and the political stuff, politicalization, is that how you say it? Politicizing of this is kind of the crux of it, because from what I understand, and you're planning to be a history teacher, it seems like you keep mentioning slavery. From what I understand is like, that's not necessarily being affected yet. Like you can still teach about that, and maybe you already, like teachers have already been doing that. But it's the false narrative that's stopping that, like that is almost overshadowing that. Does that make sense? Because like does teaching about slavery just as factual accounts even fall under CRT? Because like you said, CRT would be a framework. So I would think the thing that people are getting mad at or frustrated with, I think, doesn't it more include when they talk about how it affects like us today still?
Yes. So I use slavery as an example, and I think I use it as an example because most of the time when I'm hearing people who are kind of not for CRT, that's kind of the example they use too.
Right. Absolutely.
But it's even coming. It's like you said, it is a framework. So it's even coming into the classroom and just taking into account like who's in the classroom, also taking into account how the things in history have, like you said, impacted where we are today, too. So it's taking in all of that, honestly. So you could apply it to not just history, but to all subject matter. So English, you walk into a classroom and maybe they're not all maybe it's not a predominantly white class. Well, why are you still teaching predominantly white narratives in the classroom? You know what I mean? It's right. Kind of that topic of, well, you should be including Black stories, Asian American stories, Latinx stories. If you have that populace in your classroom, you should make sure the subjects that you're teaching match who you're teaching, because it just kind of makes sense to me. And I even had a conversation with this with the English teacher at my high school, because I guess he asked me if, I guess there was another English teacher that was white, and he was asking, well, is it fair for her to teach non-white stories to her students? And I was like, I mean, but her students are predominantly Black. So is it fair to them that she is uncomfortable teaching those stories?
She's white?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was just like an interesting conversation of like, he was like, well, is it unfair to expect that of her? And I was like, I feel like it's unfair to her students for her to not at least try.
Yeah. That's interesting.
How recent? When was that? You said, a buzzword, uncomfortable. So when did that happen?
It was about probably a month ago. Probably just last month.
Okay.
Yeah. I am a big fan of stories and people sharing their stories, written stories, movies, TV shows, and how they communicate about culture to our children and to us, to everybody. And I think there's value in having your story told to you and seeing yourself in whatever stories are being told in the classroom. And so I really resonate with what you're saying. Like, look at your classroom and then tell the stories that they'll most connect with. I think something that's true for BIPOC kids, so ethnic minority kids, is that we kind of have to learn to see ourselves in the stories of majority culture stories, right? So I love the Chronicles of Narnia. I mean, they're about British kids; they're not even American, but I love them, and I see myself in the story of those kids, like, and I always have. I think for people who have never had to exercise that imaginative muscle as a child to look at a story where their ethnicity is not represented as the main character, and then try to, as an adult, try to care about that story, I think that's hard. It's a heavy lift that they have to do, that people of color have grown up already exercising and having to do. But I also feel like what a relief it would be for Black and brown kids to be able to read Black and brown stories in a high school literature class. Like, they already have that level of connection. They already feel seen and heard in those stories. So,
sorry, I was going to say, John Mark, you even danced around the word privilege, but this is, the biggest example I come back to whenever I talk to somebody who pushes back on, whoa, privilege is, is divisive, or like it, or maybe even like it doesn't exist. And to me, like, just the example is like, you can innately, I think every American can kind of naturally see just how we even talk about things. Like almost anything else, like a book, a movie, a show or something is like a black narrative, or like I mentioned African American studies, or if a movie in movie industries, like in entertainment, have like two black leads, it's like that's a black film, or that's an Asian film, that's a Hispanic film. It's like white people are just used to like, this is a film, right? This is culture. This is the curriculum. This isn't white curriculum. This is the curriculum, and it's offensive. Like you said, now that especially grown adults, that's just what we're used to. It's embedded in the culture. It's hard to accept that would have to change. And so to me, that's like where I would go to and explain. I'm like, that is a privilege to never have to think about that. Like that you've never had to think about how to navigate not being the majority, or not like being in your comfort zone 100% of the time. Like, even I think we can all relate to this on a level, but like even, Allana, how you even described navigating, I love the quote, how you put it, like you weren't necessarily comfortable, but you, I can't read my own handwriting, but you knew how to exist. And so that's so many people's story. Yeah. Like I absolutely like resonate with that. That's so many BIPOC voices. Yeah. Our stories. And because it's such a subtle thing, because it's not like egregious, like evil in your face that people can see, it's also a privilege to not have to address that either. Like we're not claiming that, we're not slaves now. We're not getting, abused physically because of our race. Like, not that that's obviously still happening, but like, we're just, people are used to just watching us like live in what you described, Allana. I just think that was a great way to put it.
Yeah, you kind of have to make yourself fit into these spaces in order to get where you need to go. And so that's why when I was talking to an English teacher, I was just like I get she's uncomfortable, but it's more important that these kids learn to see themselves in a narrative that is good, and show them that they can be the main character in a story, no matter what the story is, rather than them learning later on, like feeling like their stories don't matter. Like I wish I had stories like this growing up, where I was shown that like I could have a narrative, I could be the main character. And so, like just conforming.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's take one more quick break and we'll wrap up with something else. If you like what you hear on this podcast, please make sure to follow us on social media. You can follow the hashtag RaciallySpeakingPod, as well as the accounts DMFipsy and Walker.JohnMark on Instagram and Twitter for more helpful content. Now, back to the conversation. All right, Allana, I wanted to kind of end with a little discussion on you and your teaching path. So you've told us a little bit about your motivation for going into this, which is really, really cool and inspiring. So like, what kind of like role, I'm trying to word this in not a corny way, but like what kind of difference do you want to make? You shed light on that a little bit. But like what goals and hope do you have for being in the classroom, navigating potentially some of the things we're talking about right now? So there's seemingly like a lot of censorship going on. You may or may not have already experienced the effects of that. So, I mean, I guess let's start there. Like, are you fearful of going into education with the polarizing things going on?
A little bit, mostly because I just don't know how I would go about doing that, because I personally don't really believe in it. So I obviously I want to be respectful of like my boss, like the people in charge of the rules, I guess. But I also
you need a job.
I want to be respectful to the students and give them the education that they deserve. Granted, I don't know if these things are going to actually take place in DC. So with my program, I do have to teach in DC for 3 years. So I might have a little 3 year like time frame.
3 year window.
Some protection from the outside.
Yeah. So because
you're not in Florida.
Because DC is pretty urban. I hate using that word. I really hate that word, urban. Yeah. But a lot of the schools are, well, where you are in DC, where I'm at right now, the schools that are surrounding me are predominantly Black. So I'm not really sure these rules are going to really take into effect in DC like that. Overall. But yeah, I have been nervous because like eventually I would like to maybe move somewhere else. I don't know. So I have a list of states in my head where like maybe not there, or like list of cities maybe not there, because I don't know if I would want to. Banning books is definitely not a thing I will ever do, like ever take part in, because I'm a big reader. But the other stuff, I feel like having to like the certain censorships in, like, I know in one state you couldn't talk about, like there's a bill going about you can't talk about current events. I don't think that's fair, because one, you're in a history class, you have to talk about current events.
Absolutely.
And if the students come to you with questions, are you supposed to be like, oh, I'm not allowed to talk about that? Like, no, they're curious. Like, you need to.
And like, do you have examples? Because that's similar to like the individual freedom bill in Florida that we broke down on an episode. Like, do you have examples of like repercussions from somebody doing that? Because like to me, like something like the individual freedom bill is like, I think I use the term like, it's like gift wrapped to like joke about and make fun of, because it sounds ridiculous to me. So like, do you know of any like examples of like there being ramifications for somebody violating it or another bill like that?
So I don't know of any examples of anybody like violating them. I know I think it's in like I don't want to say Illinois. It's in one of the like Midwest states. Okay. I can say that. There is a bill. I haven't read fully on it, so I don't want to be directly quoted, but from what I understood on it, it's a bill that basically is limiting teachers where they can't talk about current events. So say there's another say there's a shooting. We can't, like, they limit the teachers in school where the teachers can't talk about that stuff.
So what is the rationale? But do you have any idea? I'm putting you on the spot. Like, why current events? It's so broad. Like, that doesn't even sound pointed about an issue. It's just.
I think because I think a lot of these bills are coming about because parents are being, like, a lot of the wording I've seen used is like parents want stuff that needs to be handled at home to be handled at home.
Right.
I guess if that makes sense. So like certain topics need to be handled at home, which I get, but at the same time in my mind, I'm like, but are you really going to handle that at home? Because like a lot of the things I hear teachers say is the stuff that whatever is happening at home carries over into the classroom a lot. And so we, like, a lot of them are like, we don't mind if you take care of this stuff at home, if you talk about these topics at home, if you teach your kids these things at home. But if you do or don't, is this going to carry over into the classroom regardless? Because if it does, it's something I still have to handle. Like,
it seems like there's an increased distrust and devaluing of teachers. Because, like, I mean, as a parent, I do see some of both sides. Like, there's some things, I would like to be left up to the home and my parenting. But I think this narrative that's swung in the opposite end of the spectrum is like, teachers are the enemy. It's just like, that's not like teachers are so much better than me at so many things, and it makes complete sense. They're professionals, and
Yeah.
like I want my kids to
They go to
learn
things like grad school.
Yeah, I want my kids to
how
learn.
teach.
I want my kids to learn things that I have no business teaching them. Like
Yeah.
everything from math. Like my
Yep.
kids aren't gonna learn any math from me. Like that's for sure. But some parts of history, like I'm not the best person to teach that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely get like there are certain like nuanced subjects you definitely want to teach your own kids at home, but I feel like it's that fear that is like spreading out where they're like, well, now I need to micromanage everything the teacher is
Right.
teaching in the classroom to make sure like my kids aren't being exposed to anything. And it's like, I mean, we have rules. We can't just teach anything out of the box. Like we have a set curriculum we have to follow.
Need to keep those teachers in line. They're going crazy.
Yeah, and I'm like, I feel like I don't know what you expect us to be really teaching out here. Like we do have like, especially in history, you do ask opinions. You have discussions around topics that are like the like big topics in history, and like current event topics. But something I've noticed too is a lot of the big topics that you see like that parents maybe, I don't want to say fear that like, well, a lot of current day topics you'll hear like maybe be brought up in class. Some of them the kids are asking questions, and it's like, well, do I send you home without really answering, like really helping you understand what's going on, or do I let you just do I answer your questions? So I guess an example would be I had to teach a lesson on I'm student teaching in a government class. So right now they're learning about like the executive, legislative, judicial. So I was teaching about the legislative branch, so Congress. And so I was teaching them about the powers of Congress, which is one of them was to declare war, like money, all that kind of stuff. And so the topic of Ukraine and Russia came up. And so that was a big conversation of they didn't understand what was happening. And so it's the question of, well, do I tell them, like, do I explain it to them in a sense where they can understand it? Or do I just let them keep wondering because maybe it's not in the curriculum? You know what I mean? Like it's that line. And I think most teachers know if they have to do something like that, I think they know what lines to cross and what to say and what's appropriate and what's not. Let me say most of the time I think they know, because I don't want to assume everybody has common sense, but I assume if you have a degree to teach, you have some sort of common sense. So I did break down what was going on. And granted, I tried not to really be like, Russia is horrible or like Ukraine is this or whatever. But historically, I just broke it down. I was like, well, this is what's going on. This is why this is happening. This is why we can't do much. This is why like they're doing a lot. Like I tried to break it down in the most logical sense to where they still understood Congress. They still understood what I was trying to teach, but they also were still aware of what was going on. So that way they know what's going on in the world and they don't have to like worry, like, because there's so many news outlets, so many sources saying so many things. Like, well, here's the basic information that you need to know right now overall. So I don't know, I feel like I got away from the question, but
no, that's great.
It's kind of,
that was great.
It's like, again, it's like a slippery slope that I think most teachers know where the cutoff is.
Where the line is.
It seems like some of these things that could happen, that they're just things that I think need to be addressed on an individual basis if and when they happen. That's what it sounds like to me. But because of this fear thing, it's causing there to be stuff like bills being passed that just like get out ahead of it in a bad way and address a very unlikely scenario or maybe impossible scenario from happening with a blanket statement or blanket law, which then just has reverse effects and makes it, well, okay, now this is happening all the time kind of type feeling. Like for me, like I've had someone kind of explain like, well, like I get, like at least from like the university standpoint, like it can be dangerous for someone to not have any accountability and like swoop in and just like bash something, or like cram a theory down all the students' throat and be like, it's this way. There's no other way to think. Like, this is the way. Like, I don't want someone to do that about, racial issues and stuff. That's not helpful. We've unpacked that dynamic too. Like, that's not helpful.
It's not.
But I think, like you're saying, Allana, most teachers know not to do that. So if and when that were to happen, there is hopefully some kind of accountability that if that were to take place, there would be ramifications for that. But it's not, to me, it doesn't mean it warrants, let's make a giant state-by-state nationwide bill to never talk about privilege or or a race theory. That was a bad example because I'm not even saying we got to talk about critical race theory. I'm just saying, like, to err on the side of, like, okay, it's going to be outlawed that we mention anything about race, or like the latest thing, like in Virginia, was like equity. And I know there's different language between if it's banned or not, but like our governor is like removing the word equity and replacing it with opportunity as if it's like synonymous. And I'm like, no, like this is not like this. This is moving backwards. Oh yeah. So
it's craziness.
And it's done in a way that's like explaining it of like how it's positive for everybody, that it's reworded. It's like, no, who's everybody? Like who actually wants this done? And I think many of us can fill in the blank for that. So
yeah.
It's a whole movement. I think it's like, again, the fear. So they're taking the preemptive steps that may not even really be necessary again, since it should be like person by person and not whole states by states, I guess. I don't know.
Right. But, and then real quick, like you mentioned book banning, that you never take part in that personally. I looked into that, and John Mark, I'll actually say I'm swayed a little bit. Not that I'm pro. I said a little bit. So like looking at it, because I want to be open-minded, and I'm aware that like book banning is not new. It does, for some of the reasons I read about of some of the books that are banned, it's more, I think, that I don't personally have a problem with book banning if in and of itself, because I think there's probably legitimate reasons for it to be a thing. But again, I would press into the heightened rate that it's happening right now, which is for these similar reasons that we're discussing. That is wrong. Like, so I think it can be really easy to be like, oh, well, it's not new, so it doesn't matter. It's like, well, it's not new, but it's also like, why is it happening like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds more times? And why are they like these books? Like some of the books I understand, or some of the books, like a great example was, I think, To Kill a Mockingbird. I saw that was a very commonly, it was actually both commonly used high school book.
Banned?
Yeah, it's commonly used high school book, but it's also commonly banned apparently. And I read into it.
I read that one in high school.
Right. And I think it's, personally, I think it's great. But so my gut instinct would to think, oh, people are uncomfortable because it deals with racism, so they got rid of it. But I read into it, and a lot of times it was banned because of, one, it was maybe sometimes because of that, but it was because of the racial slurs, and it used flippantly without being explained contextually. And there were some other just elements that were actually, I felt like was a good argument for like, okay, that actually maybe is harmful to Black and brown children to read. And so those are both things. So I'm not actually opposed to book banning in and of itself. It's just more the blanketed swiftness of, oh, this deals with this race, or that, one of them I think is like The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I think is a very commonly modern book that's banned. I teach that at the college level. At least I do that.
College level is appropriate. I mean, I don't know, late high school, like 11th, 12th grade, but I don't know if you can separate that out from ninth graders, So I have put some more thought into book banning too. I'm like, there might be some that need to be moved up to later in education. And then also not against book banning, because if you think back a year ago, people were talking about Dr. Seuss, and they were like, take Dr. Seuss out of the schools. And people were like, they're taking all the Dr. Seuss. It was just a couple of books where he portrayed Africans and Asians in very racially stereotyped ways. I would say racist, but I know people like to use racially charged, so I'm gonna use both those synonymously. But so I've been processing through what's been and why too. So.
Dr. Seuss is a great example because I remember when that was happening, the reaction is like, oh my gosh, are we going to get rid of all the Dr. Seuss now? Are we living in a crazy time?
No.
And one,
your
it's
green
like
eggs and ham are safe. You can still have your green eggs and ham.
It's such an interesting time because as I was working in Barnes & Noble, Dr. Seuss was being sold out everywhere. I had so many people coming in.
Really? Because they thought it was going to be gone?
Yeah, because I was like, I don't think these books are leaving anytime soon. The ones they banned haven't been sold in a long
years.
Time. Right, it's like have any of those copies in the first place.
Yeah, it's like that's not what's happening. We're not that's not what's happening. So that's one. And then two, why is it the most offensive thing in the world to think about that happening? Like, that's kind of where I was camping out of like, do you care about this tradition or people it's hurting? So yeah, I feel like that's just a common, the fear thing is what I feel like is a little bit of the theme of what we're talking about that leads to these drastic measures that kind of perpetuate these cycles. But
yeah. So, but before we wrap up, before we end, I do have a couple of surprise questions.
Oh yeah, here we go.
These are the really hard hitting ones, so hold on to the edge of your chair.
Wait, for me or Allana or both?
For Allana, but you could be a part of.
No, this is great.
You don't have to leave, David.
No.
So the first one, have you heard of this TV show, Abbott Elementary?
Oh my gosh, yes. I love it so much. It's so good. It's so good.
You love it. So, David, do you know about it?
No, I don't.
Okay, so Abbott Elementary is Quinta Brunson is the writer and the showrunner. She plays a very optimistic teacher, Black woman in urban school in Philly. And she's just the most bubbly teacher who thinks she can do everything and fix everything and really does fix a lot. And then she comes up against some weathered, hardened teachers. One, Cheryl Lee Ralph, who I think best known, at least I know her best for playing the mom in Moesha, is an older Black woman teacher who she wants to mentor her, but she's just regal and just beautiful. And you think of motherly and like nurturing and cares for the students. And Quinta just is trying to do like a golden retriever puppy. And so there's a lot of these interactions she has with the staff. It is a comedy. It's like a workplace comedy. And I've loved it. My wife and I have seen every episode and can't wait for more.
What's it called again?
Abbott Elementary. Allana, what do you think about it? What are your thoughts?
So it gives me So it seems like it has the same setup as like The Office. I never got into The Office. It was like okay, but I never like really got into it before. And then I started watching Abbott Elementary, and I was like, you know what? This is the best thing ever. This is why The Office, because it's just so funny but so realistic at the same time. Like, obviously it's a comedy, so she makes it like lighthearted and it's very funny. But I think she does a good job of shining the light on the public school system still, like the fact that they don't have money for books and rugs for the classroom and school, like healthy school lunches. Like I think she does a good job of combining that commentary and still making it a comedy show. So
absolutely.
Is it on a streaming service?
Yeah, it's on Hulu.
Yeah, Hulu.
Okay.
Yeah, it's ABC puts it up, so it's on Hulu.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
So that was my question. I wanted to ask you. You have more? Share more thoughts.
I was just gonna say, and she honestly reminded me of me. All my friends are like, "That's you." And I was like, "Oh, not that." Okay.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was curious if you watched it, if you enjoyed it. I'm glad that you do. I have a sister who works in like the public city government, and she doesn't watch Parks and Rec because it's too close to home. So I was curious if that would be the case for you, or if you would enjoy it. So I'm glad you enjoy it. I love it. Yeah, it's amazing. And then one more question. So we already talked about one book, which is Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? I recommend that. I don't know if you do. I mean, you're currently reading it. So are there other books that you recommend? You said you're a book fan. Is there any fiction that you recommend? Any nonfiction? What should our listeners read and get into?
Okay, I really loved The Hate U Give, obviously for, I would say, like 17 and up.
Yeah.
Anyone who has kids who are watching. That's a very good question. I'm trying to think of what I have read. Honestly, I'm really bad at reading nonfiction, to be honest. I'm trying to get more into it. I actually want to read the 1916 Project, or 1619 Project. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
1916.
1619
Yeah,
Project.
1619.
I had a friend who read that, and she said it was really good. And the author actually teaches at Howard now in their journalism department, so I definitely want to make a point to read that.
Yeah. What's her name again?
Nicole Hannah Jones.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's correct.
Her name. And actually, her project is what stemmed the conversation around critical race theory.
Mm-hmm. It did.
And the whole commentary and arguments about it and stuff like that. So I want to check it out and read it. And she actually has a podcast too. If you're not like a book reader, I think she also put it in podcast forms on Spotify. So you can look that up too. Fiction wise.
It doesn't have to be, I mean, whatever you love. I'm also just curious about that. Like, what do you like?
I like all kinds of things, fantasy, young adults. Sorry, I'm looking at my Goodreads right now because I'm like, what did I read?
Nice, Goodreads. I need to update my Goodreads. It's been a minute.
Yeah, I use it to check all my reading because otherwise.
I remember you. I mean, you are a true reader, though. Like you, I remember that about you, right, Allana?
Yes.
You used to frequent, like you travel to see authors. Has that been something you do? Yeah.
Fortunately, COVID has limited that. But yeah, I used to go to like book festivals and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Because it was fun and it was something to do. Find something that I would really recommend. I read The Vanishing Half.
Okay.
My wife read that.
Yeah, but I forgot her name.
Vanishing Half?
Yeah, Brittany. Is her name Brittany? Something.
Britt Bennett. The Vanishing Half.
Britt because
Bennett.
I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it, and it's actually really interesting from a psychological standpoint.
Yeah.
Because it's about these twin sisters who grow up in like, I want to say maybe like the Jim Crow era, but it follows their life from then to like almost current day. And they're very white passing, but they're Black. And so I think when they were 16, they run away, and their lives, like they run away from each other too, like they separate. Mm-hmm. And so both of their lives take like different trajectories. And so it's really interesting. So like one sister, she ran away, and she had a child, and her child was actually darker than her. And so she moves back home. And so it's like the commentary of like moving back to this town with her child, and her child going through the struggles that she did not, where like people judge her for being so dark. And then the other sister actually pretends that she's white. And so she moves to California, and she, it was an accident when it started, but she just went with it, and she just lives her life as a white woman, but she has this paranoia that she's going to be figured out. And it's just a really interesting commentary on just race, but also being a woman in that time. And psychologically wise, I just found that so interesting, because I've never consider, like, obviously I couldn't be white passing, but like just the mindset you have to be able to do that, or to choose to do that, I found very interesting. So really
that sounds like
enjoyed
there's
it.
a lot of layers. That sounds super interesting.
And actually, I've recently been seeing like a lot more stories of women actually doing that throughout history. Black women could pass for white passing. So it was very interesting. So I would recommend that if anybody's interested.
Yeah,
That's a great
thank you
recommendation.
for sharing. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I just wanted to hit you with those hard questions.
They were hard.
That was awesome. That was awesome, JM. One last hard question before we get out of here. What's your favorite Disney movie? I know you're a Disney fan too, and that's where we started.
Nice.
Well, I would have to say Encanto. Really,
Yeah.
I just watched that one night randomly because I was home and I was like, let's watch something new. And I just fell in love with it so hard.
So charming.
And I made all my friends watch it with me. I was like, I'll watch it a third time with y'all. Come on, let's watch it all together. And they loved it too. The nuances, nuances in everything that's in that movie.
Absolutely.
Is amazing.
The family dynamic.
There's no argument against that. I mean, that movie is phenomenal. Phenomenal pick.
So
Awesome.
that has to be like my new all-time favorite right now.
Nice.
That's awesome. Allana, thank you so much for doing this again. This has been fantastic. I've learned so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Absolutely. Therapeutic even. I mean, hearing your stories and just the way you put some of your experiences into words was just awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll for sure have to have you back.
Mm-hmm.
No problem.
Good luck with definitely. Good luck with enjoy the rest of your spring break, what's left, and how much longer do you have in school? Is it 2 years? Program?
So the program I am in is actually for a year.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's
So you're
kind
about
of
to finish up.
Yeah, so I'll be done by the end of summer.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, congratulations preemptively.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's exciting. I hope that you're able to enter back into the schools with a relatively normal season of life. Hopefully post COVID, this COVID stuff. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, we will let you get out of here. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, of course, for listening. As always, this podcast was created to elevate BIPOC voices and our allies and to invite anyone else to listen and learn and grow with us. The music you're listening to was created by Dylan Dent, and the artwork that you may or may not see on the app you're listening on was created by the great Ashley Bush. Thank you for listening.
The nightmare might scare you, no worse than reality. They hunt you by day, R.I.P. Ahmaud Arbery. Everybody got a time, but that's less than comforting. I hope I'm alive by the time they choose to comfort me. Mosquitoes in the vein, or leeches on my soul. This money on my mind is a fracture in my bones. You get crippled by continuing existence like a ghost. And they wonder why we drink, and they wonder why we smoke, and they wonder why we think that everything's a joke. I'm shocked that we can sleep, must be the thought of letting go. Now I lay me down to sleep, I'm better with the valley.